Joining us now on the fan guest hotline, however, is I should say powered by Gruber Law, is the one and only Jason Hirschhorn from The Leap. It's always a great day when we get to talk to Jason. You can find him on Blue Sky by JBH. Jason, how you doing, my friend?
Just trying to keep up with the rapid pace of Packers news, just like you, Andy.
Yeah, very much so. Something new every single day. Certainly in that big news yesterday was Christian Watson signing that contract extension. Let's start right there. What were your thoughts on this deal for Green Bay and for Christian?
So my first thought was not what this would mean for 2025. We already have an idea that Christian Watson is going to be back earlier than we originally expected, and that's going to have some effect in terms of what that receiver rotation is going to be. That's obviously already a discussion after week one. But you look to next year. You look to the Packers depth chart prior to this deal. You would have Matthew Golden under contract. You'd have Dontavian Williams under contract. You have the last year of Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks. And you say there's really only one guy in that group that has significant experience as like that boundary X receiver. Dontavian Williams certainly has the physical ability to be that, but we haven't seen it. It doesn't seem clear right now that they're going to deploy him in that way as a rookie because of all the time that he missed. You say, oh, maybe that deal for Christian Watson was preserve that additional option as that boundary X receiver for 2026. And then you consider the draft picks that they have after the Micah Parsons deal. They weren't likely going to draft wide receivers in the first round in back-to-back years, but that means that a position that they might have attacked in the first round next year would have been one they have to spend a day 2 pick on instead, and you just push wide receiver further down the line. And this Watson deal basically takes the pressure off of that. They don't necessarily have to worry about getting a top 100 receiver in 2026 for that receiving core after, Dobbs potentially leaves or Watson would have, absent this extension, potentially left. So I think this kind of future-proofs them in that sense. I don't know if this necessarily means that Watson is going to sign, like the second Jordan Love extension. I know you guys talked about that a little bit before the break. That could happen. I don't think that we're at that point yet. But this takes care of one of their bigger needs on the offense for next offseason.
Yeah, I think so too. And they just didn't have that exact type of wide receiver like you mentioned on the roster. And I do think it kind of rounds things out for next year with Watson, Reed, Wicks, Golden, Savion Williams. And then they probably can go a little bit later. Like we kind of talked about it last segment, somewhere maybe third, but probably more like 4th through 6th round at wide receiver, just to try to get another young piece in there as you potentially try to proof for maybe losing Watson, Wicks, and Reed the following year, which will be a lot more interesting. So I think this does give them a lot more flexibility going into next year with how they kind of want to build this team. And we'll see what the contract looks like. But my guess is there's probably going to be some void years and maybe some incentives on top of this that maybe make it a little bit more palatable for Green Bay in 2026 as well. We talked about, obviously, the news that is constantly coming out of Green Bay, and it's been just insanely fast paced and insane as of late from Micah Parsons to, we can't forget Darian Kennard in there as well. Cut down day. And then of course a big win. And now you get Christian Watson, and already tomorrow we've got Packers Commanders, which feels insane. I can't believe it's already Wednesday, but I want to pause and just take a breath because I still kind of want to digest this Packers Lions game. Jason, I'll let you go in any direction that you want. What were your kind of key takeaways and something that really is just kind of still marinating with you after that game?
So a single game, especially a week 1 game, is never going to provide true proof of concept for anything. Like, we just know week 1 can be misleading across the league. But to the degree that the Packers could check a lot of boxes on their big plans from this past offseason, it seems like they did it. The Micah Parsons thing obviously took up a lot of the oxygen, and for good reason. But one of the big changes they made on that defensive front was the coaching. They made the defensive line coach, that was supposed to be the big thing that was going to improve the performance. And even when Micah Parsons was not in there, I think you saw some evidence that plan would have worked. You think of the big in the second half when they nearly get the safety of Jared Goff, and they're basically able to keep the Lions just right up against that goal line. Micah Parsons was only in for one of those plays. That sack that Rashawn Gary had, that was with Micah Parsons off the field. So you can't really apply his impact to those plays. They were still able to beat what had been one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Even with the changes they underwent this offseason, the Detroit Lions, that is, that's still considered to be one of the better units. So you have to look at that part of it, that the Packers were so insistent that it wasn't really a personnel issue. It was a coaching issue with those defensive linemen, and that they would get more production with that change. At least early on, it appears as though that approach was the right one.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm going through and just finishing up the defensive film from this game as well. And I thought Devontae Wyatt looked better. I thought Colby Wooden looked better. I thought LVN looked better. Rashawn still looked menacing. Like it looked like a totally different defensive line out there. Even Carl Brooks, I thought, was very active in this game. I was very excited about that, how the defensive front played, especially against the run. There were some question marks in the interior of the defensive line of how they would hold up. And again, I know Detroit's maybe got a couple question marks in the interior as well. We'll see how they do in week 2 against Washington, but I could not be more pleased with what I saw from week 1 out of a defensive front who, even again, not including Micah, obviously, there are questions about the other pieces with DeMarcus Covington coming in, and everyone's been glowing about what Covington's brought to the team. I think we saw that, and I think you bring up a great point there.
Yeah, and it's not even just in terms of the run defense. It's not even just about the defensive lineman. The linebacker play also very, very good. We expect at this point big things out of Edrin Cooper, and he obviously led the defense in tackles. But I thought Quay Walker had a very good game, an extension to some degree of that strong finish he had to 2024. They were both on the field for a lot, and they're going to be a big part of everything that team does against the run this season. And that run plan that the Packers put together looked really, really strong. And that would have been a good thing to say about any opponent, but it means more when it comes against a team like the Detroit Lions, given what they've done on the ground the past few years.
Well said. We're being joined by Jason Hirschhorn of The Leap. You can find him on social media by JBH over on Blue Sky. Let's talk about QB1, because this was a really interesting performance for Jordan. I thought for the vast majority of the game, he was fantastic, and really, especially early in the game, setting the pace and getting Green Bay, in those, scoring positions to start the game. That the beautiful throw to Tucker, obviously. There's also a couple misses, an RPO miss to Jaden Reed, a miss down the field to Tucker Kraft on a deep corner out early in the game, and then 2, interception-worthy plays, one that was dropped, one that was called back via penalty. How do you assess Jordan from this game?
In some sense, it was the tale of two halves, and I don't mean that as a qualitative assessment. I mean, really, in the second half, the Packers throttled down on the Lions. They only attempted 6 passes. Technically, they attempted 7, but one of those was negated by a penalty. So 6 passes in the second half. So I don't think you just look at the numbers or even just the way that the Packers called the offense in the second half and get a fair assessment of Jordan Love. But the first half, I think, is where you saw him. And you pointed out what I would say was his worst play. It was that miss of Tucker Kraft. Like, that could have been a touchdown. That was easily his worst spray. And that's pretty much all I can say that was super negative about him. I know that he had the turnover-worthy play that did not end up getting caught by, I believe it was Anzalone of the Lions.
Yep.
But, there was other factors there, shorter paths, under pressure. Like, those factors need to be included. And you look at everything else. That's not just that first drive, but the first few drives with Jordan Love, he was able to basically put the ball wherever he wanted to, and they were bombing it. I mean, this was a game where they finished with an average depth of target over 11 yards. That's very, very high if you're unfamiliar with that stat. Like, most teams are hovering around 7 or 8. This is significantly more than that. They were really trying to take it to the Lions in that first half. And in that part of the game, when they asked Jordan Love to make some big throws, he did not hesitate, and he was very successful. He had the beautiful touchdown pass to Tucker Kraft, where he just puts it into that tight little window in the end zone. And you look at the rest of the he was able to find the open receiver. He was able to even do a lot of stuff pre-snap that we've seen him do in the past, but it just means a little more in a big divisional game like they had last Sunday. And we make some adjustments to the protection. I think you saw on one of their big completions on that opening drive. Like, he really put together a strong game. So it was not perfect. It rarely is, but I don't think you can look at the final numbers and say, oh, Jordan Love had kind of a middling performance. Like, that was a really strong first game for a player who, because of that left thumb injury, did miss some meaningful practice time during training camp in the preseason.
I'm right there with you. I thought for the opening game and how he played in this one, I thought it was a winning performance. And I certainly think he set Green Bay up for success, especially like you said in the first half of this game. One of the things as we get ready for Packers Commanders, again, it's crazy that it's tomorrow already, is we're looking at this injury report, Jason, to kind of see, coming off this Detroit game and transitioning to Washington, who's actually going to be able to play in this game. Players that did not participate, in yesterday's, again, it's a walkthrough only, but Aaron Banks, Brenton Cox, Bo Melton, Zach Tom, all did not participate in any capacity. You have a bunch of players who are potentially limited as well. What worries you about this injury report, or what are you maybe keeping an extra eye on as we get closer to this game?
It's not a secret. It's the offensive lineman. Now, if Zach Tom can't play and or Aaron Banks can't play, the Packers do have the depth to cover that. We saw that in week one. I mean, that was a whole reason that the Packers traded for Darian Kennard, was that they would have in total 7 offensive linemen that they felt comfortable putting in there. And if they have to go with an offensive line that includes, Jordan Morgan somewhere among the stars, whether that ends up being at guard or a tackle, and Darian Kennard taking the other spot, I think they're going to be okay. But one, it means that the next guy up, if there's an injury during that Thursday night game, which, it's a short week, that's certainly on the table for any team, it's going to be Anthony Belton, a guy who technically has now played in a real NFL game, but only saw a few snaps at the end of week one. So if you get a little squirrely at that point, if there were to be additional injuries. Now, as we are speaking right now, we don't know if Zach Tom is going to play. Matt LaFleur did we'll give him up to game time. That usually means that player is not going to play. It's a little less clear about Aaron Banks just because there's been less discussion from the coaching staff about that. Right now, I'm kind of assuming that neither one of them end up suiting up, and it's going to mean that they're playing with Darian Kennard at one of the starting spots, someone who's only been in Green Bay for a few weeks. It's kind of the offensive line version of what happened last year with Malik Willis, and it's going to be Jordan Morgan playing as a starter somewhere. I think that's a good enough group, and they certainly have showed individually that they're good enough players. I mean, Kennard looked really good in the run game when he played this past week, and Morgan has shown some really good things in pass protection all throughout the preseason. But it's still going to be a big shakeup for that unit entering a very big game on a short week.
Yeah, we are totally in lockstep here, Jason. I am not going to lose a ton of sleep if it ends up being, Rasheed Walker, Jordan Morgan, Elton Jenkins, Sean Ryan, and Darian Kennard taking the field. I think that those 5 can certainly cut it, and I think they can be good enough to win this game. Certainly would love Zach Tom to be out there. That'd be great, but it is what it is. If he can't, I think you can survive this one. But to your point, Anthony Belton becomes probably the top backup. Donovan Jennings, your backup after that. And then you're probably going to you're going to call up either, Brant Banks or Dalton Cooper from the practice squad to be your 8th guy active. The depth gets very, very shaky on game day should anything else happen in that game. So going to be, imperative that the rest of the starting 5 that is out there, if those guys are out, does stay healthy in that game. Because again, I think anything after that, you start to get a whole heck of a lot more worried about. We're being joined by Jason Hirschhorn, The Leap. You can find him on social media at @byjbh. Him and Peter, of course, do a phenomenal job with The Leap newsletter. If you're not checking that out, make sure to do so. It is definitely worth your time. What I want to ask you then finally, Jason, is what are you thinking about this Packers-Commanders game? What are you kind of keeping an eye on, and what do you think could potentially swing this game?
So besides the offensive line, I want to dip into that subject again. I am very curious to see, frankly, just what the Packers offense looks like in a full game, because in a way, the Packers did not have to play their full offense over the course of that week one matchup with the Lions. And I just wrote about this for The Leap. You go through that tape, and I don't want to spoil the article for anyone who's going to go check it out, but there are a few concepts that the Packers tend to call some like LaFleur staples that literally do not show up on tape during that game. And that's probably because they really only had to go through the full offense in the first half. And after that, they really just needed to kill clock, get the game over with. And I'm curious to see what those tweaks are that the Packers have in store for 2025. If you remember last week, Matt LaFleur, when he's asked about the Detroit coordinator changes, says, look, every team tweaks in the offseason. There are going to be some differences, and there would have been some differences even if Ben Johnson, for example, was still in Detroit. And I heard that. I was like, okay, well, what are your tweaks? And I'm very curious to see what those are. We have not seen them yet. We saw a bit of the Packers 2025 iteration in week one. I don't think we saw the whole thing. And this might actually be the week where we get to see some of those tweaks, some of those things that LaFleur and his staff spent the offseason scheming up. That could be interesting. Those unscouted looks, I think, are going to come out this week against Washington.
And that could be a ton of fun and just kind of giving some unique wrinkles to this Washington team. I do think they were able to hold a few of those things back from this past week and hopefully have a few very fun wrinkles set up for Washington in what should be a very entertaining game on Thursday Night Football. You got a prediction for this one, Jason?
Well, even before the Micah Parsons trade, I thought that this is a game that the Packers were likely to win. I have some questions about Washington. It is a very old roster. It's not the way that most people think of it because Jaden Daniels just got there a year ago. He's a young quarterback. They have some other young star players, or at least high-quality players on that team. The overall age of that roster is the highest in the NFL, and there's a lot of reasons to think that there could be some built-in regression, regardless of age, with that team off of last year. I think they had a lot of good breaks, and I think they can cover up some of those with improvement. But I don't know that they can cover up them all. So they got the win in week one. It's technically an undefeated team going into this Thursday night game. But I think that Washington roster is ripe for the taking. And now the Packers have all the things that we just discussed. And Micah Parsons with another, well, not full week, but another half-ish week of preparation in this Packers defense. So I do think it bodes well for Green Bay. And if they get off to a 2-0 start with a mini bye and then a upcoming slate that includes the Cleveland Browns and the post Micah Parsons Dallas Cowboys, they're pretty much in position to be not just a front runner in the NFC, but a front runner in the NFL. So there's a lot on the table for Green Bay this week. I think they're set up very well for it.
I do too. I can't wait for this one. I like Green Bay. Also, I don't know if I feel great about being as confident as I am about this one, but I do feel confident that they can pull off a win against Washington on Thursday Night Football. Should be a really fun one. Jason, I cannot thank you enough. You guys do incredible work over at The Leap. I'll let you plug anything on your way out.
Yeah, I would just suggest that people go check out that article we put out this morning. The Packers offense, we really think is going to show some new things as soon as this week. And there are certain hints that they put in there in week one that I think are going to show up throughout the season. So check that article out. TheLeap.football is where you can find us. And thank you for having me on, Andy.
Yeah, you bet. I think Peter and Jason do some of the best analytical work out there and finding some of those little nuances that you may not pick up on in real time, but you can look forward to moving forward. And that's the exact type of stuff that you're going to find over on The Leap pretty much every single day. Again, you guys do wonderful work. Jason, I cannot thank you enough for your time. We'll do it again real soon.
All right. Take care, Andy.
You bet. That was the one and only Jason Hirschhorn joining us on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law. One call, that's all. Again, make sure to follow him on social media @ByJBH. This is the Pack-A-Day Radio Show. More right after this.